And Nancy, you can go ahead and kick us off. This is exciting.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm Nancy McSherry Jensen. I'm the CEO of The Swing Shift. I'm here with Sarah Denwald, who runs our partners, our programs and operations. And today on Hangout Habits, we're talking about what moves you forward with Micha GoBig. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Micha, and then we're going to start, and we're going to have it's a little fireside chat.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little too hot for fires today, but so Micha GoBig works with women in tech and other male-dominated industries, guiding clients through the process of unlearning what holds them back and gaining the confidence they currently lack in their professional environment. Born and raised in Germany, Misha's professional background started in the German luxury car industry. Upon moving to the US, she found the issues women face at leading tech companies and startups similar to her old tech background. Micha works on a range of issues, including negative self-talk, imposter syndrome, perfectionism, and self-sabotage in her talks and workshops. And we are delighted to have her join Hangout Habits today to discuss things that hold you back, and more importantly, how to move forward, whether you're changing roles or coming back after a break. Micha, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Nancy and Sarah. I'm excited to be here.
I am too. So I want to get right in here. You work on an incredible range of issues that professional women face in the workplace. Now, during the pandemic, we have all been struggling with boundaries. How do women learn to prioritize getting back to work or looking to get to that next role when we seem to be always pulled in so many different directions, particularly now in the summertime?
So first off, I would like to say, if you can take a bit of time for yourself, as the weather is so nice. I mean, we are all in Seattle or the area. We are enjoying like crazy summer weather. If you have the time to enjoy that a little with your family, or maybe take some time off, do that now, because we all deserve that after what we've been through. So just because the worst is over, stepping back into a hustle mentality doesn't seem helpful. I mean, a little more, we need a little self-compassion and a little bit of time to actually take that step back to think about what you want. So if you need a job right now to feed yourself and your family, yes, then go ahead and really go immediately. But if you have the time to spend a bit more time on thinking about not a job, but your career, now is a great time. And really think about what have I learned during this very stressful, high anxiety time, because there were good things too. A lot of people very much enjoy working from home and realize how productive they can be, maybe also in weird hours. Some people are very productive at 4:30 in the morning. Some people are very productive at 11 p.m. That's something a lot of us have not had a chance to experience before. And so those things, where do you want to take your career? And then baby steps, really baby steps. If that is your goal, what can you do? One step today. Is it reaching out to someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, I really like what you do. Can we talk? Because it sounds so awesome to me. Is it really that awesome? I would like to hear from someone who's in there. Or it can be talking to your boss about the modalities going forward. A lot of your viewers have that discussion right now and need to prepare for it, because your company will look at their advantage, their benefit.
And I think that notion of preparation is really important, regardless of where you are on that spectrum. You know, one thing that we hear from people, particularly folks that have had their families home for a long time, is I'll wait till the fall. I'll wait till the kids get into school. And I think that the notion of taking a baby step and then carving out, maybe it's just an hour a week to look at these career issues. Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to jump in on?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I feel like this summer, if people are in career transition, they're taking the summer maybe because they have to, because they have kids at home or whatnot. But yes, also making sure that they're, forcing themselves, for lack of a better word, to really, yes, carve some time out, and think about either career discernment or just start, getting that network back up to date, making sure their LinkedIn is complete, and they start connecting, and they're, and putting some time in, some thoughtful, effort around it. Because yes, I feel like this summer is still going to be crazy for a lot of people, and unscheduled, and, hard to manage. But come fall, when kids hopefully all are back in school, things will start ramping up again, and to just, it'll feel less daunting if you're somewhat prepared for that.
Right. Yeah. Right. And is there anything else about boundaries, Misha, that you want people to think about?
I am a big fan of micro doses of self-care, and I think that applies a lot to boundaries. It's not that you suddenly have to change it all at a time, right? It's just like there can be tiny, tiny little things. It can be, all right, I don't want anybody to speak to me before 7 a.m. or I don't know, or it's just like, I'm taking a 15-minute walk around the block. Do not text me. I am leaving. I'll be right back. If the house is not burning down, do not text me. And that can be like those little places you can carve out for yourself, where you either think about your career or just breathe.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep.
The micro doses. Yeah.
I do too. Yeah. I do too, because it feels so overwhelming. And I think, Misha, what I'm hearing you is saying is break it down into smaller pieces, because they're more manageable.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's also for the people on the receiving end.
Right.
They get used to you saying, this is a boundary. If it's later, like, okay, it's no big deal. Those 15 minutes, I don't need to text.
Right.
And then when you come with the next step, it's easier. You train your family and your boss and your colleagues too.
Yes. Yep. Well, listen, another topic that has emerged during this time is this notion of decision fatigue. And I did a little research into this, and some researchers show that people make over 35,000 decisions a day. I was floored by that number. And then I started to think about it, and I thought, oh, that actually makes sense, because we're making these micro decisions moment to moment. Yep. What guidance do you offer folks who are really exhausted from these, even though we've been locked at home and now we're being faced with this additional set of choices as we head back out into the world? People are exhausted from this overwhelming array. So are there some actionable steps people can take here to keep decision fatigue at bay?
Yeah. I mean, decision fatigue is totally real. I've felt that long before I actually learned the term and learned about the science. And I bet with all these micro decisions that we take, like even scrolling in your feed, that's like 20 micro decisions to swipe again, right? I bet that if you, let's say, have a full-time job and 4 kids, you're far beyond the 35,000 decisions a day. So the research is very clear on one point. We make our best quality decisions in the early part of our day, whatever that is, in the morning, but your early part of the day. That science is very clear on that. So those of us who love to do lists and love to tick off a lot of things in the morning and grab for the low-hanging fruit first to get the list shorter are actually not doing themselves a favor. So if you can, try to move the high priority decisions into the earlier part of your day. Same for private decisions. You don't want to make your big family decisions over dinner. Maybe Saturday breakfast or something earlier in the day with your partner. That is a better time.
That's a really great
that's a
point.
clear one. Early part of the day for big stuff. Then what works for me is put as much on the schedule as I can, because then I don't have to decide in the moment. let's say my gym, I'm in a Pilates gym, and I think yesterday they brought out the July schedule. I spent just like 20 minutes just clicking on the classes I want to take, and they are on my schedule now. I'm scheduled for July. Of course, there will be a couple of changes, but it's not a do I want to go or not situation anymore. I have my gym time on the schedule.
Yep.
And then there's the last one is, what can you standardize? So we know that mostly for men and their uniforms, like Steve Jobs and his black turtleneck, and Mark Zuckerberg and his gray T-shirt, and Obama with very much the same suit. I personally would not want to standardize my wardrobe. I enjoy those decisions. I can still make them in the evening because that's fun decisions. What I standardize, for instance, is I've been walking and running with the same playlist for years. If I find a new song I like, yes, I can put it on, but it's not important enough to me to make new playlists all the time. Or it's not important enough to me. I'm good with eating the same stuff over and over again.
Right.
So when I go to restaurant A, I order dish B until I'm really annoyed with it. And then I switch.
Yeah.
I don't look at the menu.
And I love the idea of you saying, decide which things you can just systematize.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So that you don't have to think about those things. Sarah, I know you and I have talked about this in the past, where, and particularly with things like wardrobe, a dress rehearsal the night before, and or using a service like Armoire, really takes it takes the decision fatigue out, because you've got this matched set of things. In terms of career, what are a couple of things that can help with decision fatigue? Because in some ways, particularly right now, so many people, as you mentioned, so many people are reassessing what is the role of work and what do they want or not want as they move forward. And that notion of, endless possibility, that's exhausting. What's one thing from a career perspective that would help bring that decision fatigue down?
So I have a set of, they are actually on my whiteboard over here. I have a set of 3 objectives, and I run any offer or something by those objectives and see if they're a good match. So my favorite state of being is excited, inspired, and connected. And when I discuss with someone about, we could do this, we could do that, I run it by those 3 objectives. And I'm like, if it meets all 3, I'm totally in.
Right.
Not everything I do has to meet all 3 criteria, but it is pretty easy when something only hits 1 category or 0. I'm a gracious no.
Yeah.
That's an automatic, I'm a gracious no.
Yeah. I love that, because a lot of times it's, people talk about their core values, right? Or which seems that it's kind of an offshoot of that. But sometimes I think you have to have very clear goals, right? They can be large goals, long-term goals. Yeah. And then if these decisions don't match those goals, but I love structuring it in a way of more of like feelings, right?
Yes.
Because that's just as important too.
Right.
That's neat.
Yeah. And we know how we want to feel at work, right? You might have very different objectives from my 3, but we know these things.
Like I was just telling Nancy, there's a couple things we had to do last week. We had a really busy week work-wise. And I was like, I'm getting really clear on what drains me and what excites me. Because I had those 2 things back to back. And I had to do the thing that drains me. And I knew that, because it was a professional obligation. But the fact that I'm now like just being more aware of that is helpful, because then I can really, really think like, is this something that's worth it to me? Because I know this maybe isn't my strength, or I don't enjoy it. And so, I think too, like you said, sometimes you have to do certain things. Maybe you need the money, you're getting paid, whatever it is. but just knowing like I'm doing this, but I don't like it. So maybe down the road, I won't do it again. Yeah.
Exactly. Just knowing that you're not looking into roles that have more of it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes. Yep.
And really putting more energy towards the things you really love and communicating more about these things with your team as well, so that this is what you're known for.
Right. Right. And and I think that having that your top 3 check-in is a great way. It's a good like mini sanity check. Does it hit my top 3? Oh, it doesn't hit any of those. Why am I doing this?
And that works personally too.
Yes.
I think for personal obligations as well.
Yep. And so you mentioned, that when we talked a little bit before this, we want to talk about you for a minute, because you've changed careers a couple of times, Micha. First, from an academic literature focus, and then from luxury automobile marketing to leadership development. From your perspective, because many of the people that are watching this and that we work with are looking to make a shift. What prompted these shifts for you, and what was your single biggest fear when you made each change?
We can even start one step earlier. My family was so shocked. I had gotten into one of the most prestigious business schools, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just studying literature instead. The decision to study literature was a passion driven. I still read 1 or 2 books a week, and mostly fiction. And then I said, like, okay, then I'll become a professor. And that was like, okay, first job out of grad school. I taught college in the US. All good, came back, entered a PhD program, realized not all good. There was a combination of factors. I am inattentive ADHD, so that worked pretty well, including the master's. But with the PhD, it was only about depth and very, very focused, and that was just not doable for me. And there was this thing of imposter syndrome, and combined with a pretty toxic environment, not friendly, not women friendly. I'm talking about German academia back then, but yes, it's academia can be a pretty toxic environment. So I dropped out. And the thing that I had loved at that point was teaching. And so that's how I got into teaching workshops. I was bilingual, which wasn't common in Germany. So someone said, do you want to pitch? And that's how I ended up with the automotive industry. And first I thought, back then I did a lot of finance too, and I'm like, oh my God, if anybody had told me I end up with cars and finance, I'd just like shoot myself. But the good thing about doing a lot of different things is I could get interested in them. I'm very multi-interested. I know I can get interested in anything if it's not taking too long.
So Micha, drilling down on that, because we have a few women in our community, actually a lot, that want to pivot from academia into tech, essentially, or a different retail, or different industry. And you made that leap. So did you use your network for that? Did you just start telling people what you were good at and what you're interested in? Can you drill down a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah. I mean, that's a long time ago. I did go to university in Munich, and one of Germany's biggest car makers is right there, and the others are not too far. So among the men mostly that I had met during my undergrad and grad time, a lot of them, those are very popular employers. So lots of them tried to exactly go there, and they were there by then. So it was indeed a thing where I could say, hey, I'm really good at basically anything in communications in 2 languages. And it was network based. And then the advantage of that industry was that they have a very low staff turnover. So that's something we don't have in tech these days. That makes it harder. Back then, they still have a staff turnover of like 4% in these companies. So that's very different.
you took something from your background that was directly applicable, where you said, hey, I've got this, I'm multilingual, and I'm able to address, I'm interested in many different things, and you told them what you wanted. And then they said, oh, here's where we can plug you in. I mean, I think it's important to tell, many times people are hesitant to tell their colleagues and their peers and their friends what it is they think they might want next, because they don't want to be vulnerable or they don't want to impose on people. But you have to tell people what you want. They can't read your mind.
I am not hesitant in asking. Ever. That's something that's really something, fortunately, I've learned in my family, that kind of like, if we had a family motto, it would probably be just ask, they can't say more than no.
Right.
And that no doesn't, and so that made me relatively resilient to no's, because I know that this no doesn't have to say anything about me. It might, that's right, but most often it doesn't.
Right. Right.
I love that. So that was ingrained in you growing up.
That's a huge benefit, because that's something a lot of women struggle with. Everybody loves to help, but nobody wants to ask for help.
Right. Right. And it's hard. It's hard to make yourself vulnerable and say, I think I want to get out of what I've been doing and go to this next thing. So you worked in the luxury car industry, and then you decided to make the leap to leadership development. How did you make that switch?
I worked with quite a few boards, both car makers and then in the supplier industry, and especially in the supplier industry. Those are not those smooth CEOs, CFOs that we know from the sexy companies. And so I worked a lot with those people on being able to speak with analysts, with the media. And I had a coach back then. I have no idea how I came up with hiring my own coach 15 years ago in Germany. It was not a thing, but I did. And I told her how bored I am, that I feel like I've done everything in that field. And she was actually the one who said, you've done so much one-on-one work and workshops. You are so good with that people aspect. How about doing coaching training? And of course, as things sometimes happen, I met an executive coach, a woman in Germany, and it's like, okay, she has a program. Let's train with her.
And so that's how you started.
Yeah.
Great. Love it. Great. That's really, it's fascinating. What were you afraid as you made these changes? Was there where did you go, oh my God, what if?
Yes. I mean, I tend to say yes first and then freak out.
Yes.
Or freak out and hopefully figure it out. I mean, both steps. And that's something I've really learned, that you just jump and then just hope that that there's a parachute somewhere. Because I think that was actually my dad who told me, when people ask you if you can do that, they already expect you to be able to do it.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. I mean, they wouldn't ask me if I want, because they don't want to ruin their company for me.
No. And I think it relates to that attitude of, well, if they say no, okay, you just kind of move on,
It's also, just going to say, it's also about having, that confidence in yourself about you can figure anything out, right? You're resourceful. Like it's one thing Nancy and I have come to learn that we're really good at being, when we started our own company, was we just had to say yes. And then you figure it out because you have to, right? There's no other choice. And we've gotten really good at doing that. And it's almost like a muscle, right? That you have to work.
Yeah, totally.
And there's certain environments that bring that out. And sometimes it's exhausting. Some days I'm like, I'm tired of trying to figure it out. I just want to do the same thing over again and get really good at that one thing. Right. But that's just for where we're at in our careers right now, which is fantastic. But it's also, about having that confidence in yourself that, you know what, like you can figure anything out. You are resourceful. the internet, right? You ask for help, whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's actually one of my basic mantras. I am very high energy that sometimes comes with very high anxiety too. And that's like, I've always figured it out. I'll figure it out. That's really one of my sentences. Sometimes when I walk the dog, this is really the thing. I'm just like, I've always figured it out. I'll figure this one out too.
Right.
Over and over.
Yeah. So the flip side of this, is people get into these things and then they self-sabotage, and then they do a little bit of negative self-talk. And these things seem to go hand in hand. So could you talk a little bit about how that works and some ways to short circuit that spiral? Because nothing good comes of either of those things.
No, that's true. I mean, what happens there is they often do go hand in hand. What happens here is that the oldest part of our brain, the part that part has only one job, to keep us alive, right? This is where the fight and flight sits, and nothing else, pretty much. It's not meant to make us happy, and it's actually good that fear overrides anything. Because if we're in the jungle and there's a hungry tiger, yes, we want fear to override anything. Or to put that in modern day terms, if we are in a big city and we are alone on a dark street, yes, we want that impulse to like, are there steps behind me, to be the sharpest. But what we have to learn, for instance, is, yes, the steps behind me in a dark street in a big city can be a major danger. I need to listen to that fear impulse. Stepping on a stage and talking to my colleagues or something, I'm just taking public speaking because that's the number one fear in America. This is not a danger to my life and limb. This is the same reaction, but I can override it. So it starts with that self-awareness, because we have those limiting beliefs that I am not a good speaker, for instance, or I'm not good with money, or what I hear a lot with women, I'm not a leader. Let's say, example, you're the middle child with two brothers, and as a girl, and so your role in your childhood might have been peacemaker, and you have the message like, this brother, he's a total leader, and then you take that, and your brain's like, oh no, we don't do leadership. Oh no.
Right.
And because it's outside of the comfort zone, which is a bit of a misnomer, it's often not comfortable. But that is really where the self-awareness has to come in and say, okay, I have a limiting belief around that. I have to work on it, to unlearn it. Not a quick fix, unfortunately, but.
Well, I think that notion of self-awareness is really, really important, because all of us, I think, do this at one point or another, where you start down a path and then you do things that you think, well, why am I getting in my own way? Why am I talking myself down when I know that this is going to be good for me, or good for my business, good for my family, good for my career? Why am I getting in the way of this? And I do think, and it goes back to what you talked about at the very beginning. This is I like this very cyclical, setting a boundary around some things, where you're out on that 15-minute walk where you're saying, do not text me family, do not text me colleagues, where you can think a little bit about, okay, why am I doing this? And what am I getting out of this? And is it sending me a bigger message, or am I just getting it? Is it just a fight or flight thing where I'm going to actually succeed? And yes, success can be scary.
Yeah. But I want to offer that fear and excitement are very similar feelings.
Yes.
And there's this quote, fear is excitement without the breath. You can breathe your way from fear into excitement, because all the big things in our life are scary and exciting.
That's right. And I think that's a fascinating insight.
I love that you can breathe it into excitement from fear. Yep.
Yeah.
Might take a while.
Yeah, well, and I think that there's, from the outside looking in, I think there's always this perception of, well, she's doing this, she makes it look easy, where I think when you talk to anybody who's mastered this, they'll say, oh no, it took me a long time.
Yeah, right.
And,
you
to
still
get
fail
to this point.
Yeah.
every once in a
yes.
while. And then you're like, oh my God, can I please take a leaf out of my own book? Yeah.
So I have one other thing I want to ask you about, and it's this notion of perfectionism, right? And many women in particular feel, and we see this, and perhaps we've experienced this a couple of times, that in order to compensate for many things, this negative self-talk, the self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, that you've got to be more perfect than perfect to make sure that you're doing a good job. How do you know when things are good enough? Because I think we found many times that perfectionism gets in the way of getting things done.
Of progress. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Done is better than perfect. That's the name of one of my workshops. Yes. So first of all, when are things good enough? Things are good enough when you decide they are. But you have to take ownership. No, this is not about what your parents expected you to do. This is not about your best friend thinking you should be doing something else, or your sister, or all these things. We always poll people, but you are the expert on yourself. So you're good enough. It's your yardstick. It's your benchmark. This is really, and that's hard, because we live in a comparison culture. And then the thing is, I grew up in Germany. One of my business partners grew up in Singapore. We've both lived in the US for a very long time. It seems like no matter where you grow up, the notion of what defines being a good girl has a couple of very similar messages. And one of those messages is always, don't cause trouble. That be a good girl. Don't be stressful to your parents because your brother already is. That type. I don't want to man shame here, but it's very often a message that girls get. It's like, oh yeah, that be a good girl, go to school, do your homework, don't need to be pushed, be nice, be helpful. And that's a big source, family, culture, society, of that perfectionism, because that's our idea of Wonder Woman, being a good girl. And I mean, what I propose is, perfect doesn't exist. Perfect is only something I see on Instagram. And when you ask the people, they don't feel their life's perfect. I mean, they have their own struggles, right? What I propose is focusing on excellence, because excellence can be achieved. Not every day, otherwise it would be average, but excellence can be achieved, and it's actually measurable.
How, I mean, at least measurable? To a wide, I would love to know that, because I think that helps.
Extent, right? To a wide extent. It depends on, like, there are, in a job, you have KPIs, and you have your agreements, like your performance agreements. So there's when you really have a chance to say, how do we define excellence in my performance? It's not easy. It's not definitely not. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is at least something you can make specific.
Got it.
It's very obvious for athletes, right? With athletes, we know what excellence means, because they know exactly where the level for excellence is in their field. It's a little trickier for those of us more in the soft skills arena.
Yes. But I think it goes back when you mentioned a little while ago about having your top 3 things of, when I'm looking at a job, am I intrigued? Am I excited? Am I intellectually engaged?
Yep.
It seems like, oh, can you hit those 3 things? Did you hit it to the best of your ability? Then that is done.
Yep. Or when you do a job, when you are job searching right now, you can really set out numbers for yourself.
Yes.
Right. How many people am I going to talk to this week? What else am I doing? You can be very specific.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I think that's a really great way to think about that, and put numbers behind it. Say,
Yeah.
did I hit my
Mhm.
number this week?
Yep. Make a little chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have, we've got, it's funny, we talk a lot about that with follow-ups, but I think it's really smart to be proactive about that too. And even if it's to say, I'm going to reach out to one person this week. Did
Exactly.
I do my outreach? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Sarah, did you have anything else to add here?
No, I don't think so. This
All
has
right.
been awesome. I do love that idea. I was just thinking through like the measuring excellence, Nancy, how you said it's hard to measure, but you're right. If you can create goals for yourself and understand like, okay, if I'm here, this is an excellent job this week, right?
Right.
If I'm here, I know maybe I have some opportunity for the next week, right? To spend a little bit more time doing this or whatnot. But yeah, there are strategies to be able to manage that for sure. So
Right.
And I do a micro, if I may add that, I do a micro evaluation of my week on Sundays. I write down what went really well. Just write down a few things. I mix professionally and professional private stuff. And then what didn't go well. And then what would I do differently? Sometimes I feel like I don't really know. But other times I'm like, oh my God, yes, of course. I mean, that didn't go well, but now I know this. So I write that, and then I just write a couple of like 2-3 top priorities for the next week. I do it on Sunday, just because it puts me in the right mindset for the week, but just evaluating what you do without only waiting for your boss to ask for evaluation, just for yourself, your own standards.
That I think it's very smart. It feeds to the bigger self-awareness issues that you're talking about, right? You can't really be self-aware if you say, oh, well, everything went great or everything stunk, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be in between for everybody.
Exactly.
And so putting that little stake in the ground and taking a few minutes to say, oh, this, here are my highlights, here are the lowlights. And that will help, whether it's on a personal or on a professional angle, it will help drive things forward.
Yep.
Misha GoBig, thank you so much for joining us here on Hangout Habits. People can find you at mishagobig.com. Is that right? Online?
Yeah. Either michagobig.com or gobigcoaching.com. And I do have a free laser coaching session for people. So when you check under availability, you can bring an issue and I'll coach you through it.
awesome.
Oh, that's a really great offer. Thank you again. Hang out for just a second and we'll wrap things up here live and in the recording.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.